Hello, my dear students. Very good morning to one and all. Hope you people are fine and attending the classes regularly. In my previous videos, I have given elaborate information about elements of English language. In this video, I am going to discuss social, psychological, and applied perspectives and language, words, utterances, and conversations. My dear students, if you want to learn completely about this topic means you have to watch the video till end. Now let us see. So in this video we are going to see these are all the topics. First one is words, then linguistic abstractness, language, gender and syntax, then language and social thought, between language effects, words, identity and impressions of words. First, let us see what is words. As we all know that word is nothing but it is a mixture of letters. With the help of letters, we can make words. To make words, we need letters. Words are the smallest meaningful unit of language and the building blocks of sentences, utterances, conversations, novels, and so on. Children begin acquiring words early and quickly. Although estimates vary, on average, a 2-year to old actively produces and comprehends 500 words, and a 5-year old up to 3,000 words. Although humans may have a natural capacity to acquire words, they are acquired in context and for a specific and for communicative purposes. From the beginning, words are tools that are designed to alter the world in some way. Words can function as tools because there is some consensus among language users regarding their meaning. This type of word meaning is explicit and is essentially the intended sense and reference of a word. In addition, words can have important social cognitive consequences beyond their explicit meaning and can trigger extra linguistic behaviors independently of the language symbols referential meaning. Such automatic reactions have been demonstrated many times with various priming procedures. So this is what the words. Hence, the presentation of a word can activate associate representations that influence how quickly a subsequent word is recognized, an effect that can occur even when participants are not able to recognize consciously the presented word. Particularly relevant for social psychology is the manner in which words can prime person categories and hence influence subsequent judgments about people or directly activate particular social behaviors. The social cognitive consequences of words are not limited to simple associations. There is, in fact, a relatively rich history of social psychological interest in the explicit social information that can be encoded in words. For example, the Haider's 1958 classic, The Psychology of Interpersonal Relations, involved a detailed conceptual analysis of the properties of common verbs such as can, try, want, an attempt to discover and elucidate the social concepts underlying these words and the relationships existing between them. Similarly, Allport's 1954, The Nature of Prejudice placed considerable weight on language as a primary mode for the expression and the transmission of prejudice. Allport outlined a variety of ways in which prejudice is linguistically manifested, and his analysis of stereotypes pointed to the directive function of language in building fences for our mental categories and our emotional responses. So this is what the elaborate definition, elaborate knowledge I have given about the words. Hope you got the points. Next we shall see linguistic abstractness. A conceptually similar approach termed the linguistic category mode was advanced by Gun Simin and Klaus Fiedler in the late 1980s, Semin and Fiedler 1988 and 1991. This model has been particularly popular and today remains a vibrant area of research. Example, see special issue of Journal of Language and Social Psychology, Sutton and Douglas 2008. These are all the references to see about the linguistic abstractness. Their approach extended work in this area by documenting additional implicit dimensions of words and doing so with syntactic categories in addition to verbs. They proposed that verbs and adjectives and later nouns are linguistic categories that can be ordered on a continuum of linguistic abstractness. At one end of this continuum are descriptive action verbs, example talk, verbs that are concrete and relatively easy to verify. Somewhat more abstract or interpretive action verbs such as help, words that are subject to greater observer disagreement. It is less easy to identify a behavior as constituting help than a behavior as constituting talk. The continuum then continues with state action verbs, for example, surprise, followed by state verbs, example, like, and finally adjectives, example, honest. Because they reference internal states, state verbs are less observable and hence less verifiable and agreed on than action verbs. State verbs are also more enduring than state action verbs and hence more abstract and revealing. So this is what the language abstractness. Now we shall see language, gender and syntax. One pervasive and specific type of implicit word meaning concerns gender. Although the fundamental social category of gender is represented in some way in all languages, there are differences between languages in the nature and extent of this representation. For some languages, example German, gender is coded as a grammatical category. Example, nouns must be either feminine or masculine. For others, for example, English, there is only a subset of forms that code for gender. For example, personal pronouns. And for other languages like Finnish, gender has no grammatical relevance. An interesting yet unexamined question is whether these between language differences are related in any way to between language differences in gender attitudes. What is clear, however, is that the distribution of terms for expressing gender in most and probably all languages is not symmetrical. In most languages, for example, female reference is usually the mocked form, that is, not the default form, thereby indicating that the male form is the norm. This asymmetry is also revealed in lexical gaps, such as the lack of a term for one of the two sexes. Example, Miss in English, and word pairs whereby the feminine version expresses reduced status. Example, governor, governors. So in English, we can see for a different words for female. To address female, we are having some different words. Example, governor, governors, like that we can man, women, we are having like this. The most well known and potentially for reaching asymmetry is for masculine generics forms that function both generically and sex especially. Although manifested differently, masculine generics appear to occur in all languages and have been the target of feminist critics of language. Almost all of the empirical research on the social cognitive consequences of these forms demonstrate a masculine bias. That is, the referent is assumed to be male. For example, participants in a story competition task were more likely to generate male rather than female targets following the occurrence of a generic pronoun. Using a priming procedure, Banerjee and Hardy 1996 demonstrated that terms frequently assumed to be generic. Example, chairman. There is no chairwoman. Prime masculine rather than neutral pronouns. So this suggests that masculine bias for gendering term is automatic, an interpretation that is consistent with much other research in this area. My dear students, try to understand. In English, we are having some neutral words, which is common for both male and female. But in that word, we can see masculine name, I mean masculine words. Then we shall see words, identity, and impressions of others. The words that people use and how they use them are in a rich source of information about one's identity, including especially one's group identification. Linguistic variation both reflects a person's personality and social background and simultaneously is a mechanism useful in the presentation and maintenance of one's identity. Hence, linguistic variation can be both strategic and non-strategic. The relationship between identity and linguistic variations being a focal concern for the field of social linguistics, especially social linguistics. Social linguists have attempted to map the relationship between linguistic variables and social variables. Classic and highly influential research in this vein was conducted by William Labov, who investigated that stratification of linguistic variables in New York City. In a field study now regarded as a classic, Labov asked department store employees for the location of a particular item known to be on the fourth floor, thereby requiring speakers to pronounce two words fourth floor containing or. The stores he examines varied status, Saks, Maxis, Klein's, as did the age of respondents. As predicted, Labov found that the pronunciation of R increased with social class and decreased with age, but only for the high and low and not the middle class respondents. Thereby demonstrate the linguistic marking of social class and age. Respondents were also more likely to pronounce or when they had to repeat these words and hence were paying greater attention to their speech, leading Labov to postulate a general link between class marking and attention to speech. People tend to use upper class pronunciation when they attend carefully to how they talk. Other social linguistic research has demonstrated that exist the existence of social class differences in a variety of linguistic variables, including syntax, lexical choice, intonation, and others. The manner in which identity, especially group identity, is related to linguistic variation has been studied extensively and includes, for example, studies of the verbal interaction of people with differing sexual orientation, police civilian contact, and gender differences. Intergenerational interaction has been a topic of particular interest, as has research on African American vernacular language. The results of this research demonstrate that language varieties in a speech community can be ordered on a continuum of prestige and that evaluations of speakers of these varieties parallel this ordering. In Great Britain, for example, received pronunciation or P is the prestigious standard, and speakers of that dialect are evaluated more favorably than all speakers of urban varieties such as Cockney and Birmingham. With the advent of sophisticated and easy to use digital manipulation techniques, it has become possible to manipulate and examine a wide range of specific language markers. For example, Campbell Kibler 2007 used the matched guise technique to examine the impact of the English ing variable. Example, reading versus reading, or dropping one's gs in left terms. The occurrence of ing forms was associated with greater perceived education, articulateness, and urbanity related to the inform. So now we shall see the language and social thought between language effects. The unintended and implicit consequences of words in reminiscent of the well-known Wolff-Sapir hypothesis, or more commonly the Wolffian hypothesis, a cluster of ideas based on the writings of Benjamin Wolff 1956 and Edward Sapir 1921. The Wolffian hypothesis, or the idea that the language one speaks affects how one thinks, has had a checkered history. Although largely discredited by the 1970s, there has been a clear resurgence of interest in these ideas. The Wolffian hypothesis was never a clearly specified theory or hypothesis, and interpretations have ranged from the trivial that language plays some role in thought to impossible that language determines our perceptions. And until recently, this has had the unfortunate effect of hindering research on the role of language in social thought. Fortunately, more recent work in this domain has formulated hypotheses regarding the language thought relationship in more specific and hence testable ways. Early test of Wolff's hypothesis. Early test of above hypothesis examined perception of and memory for color because linguistic communities differ in the manner in which the color spectrum is lexicalized. There was an expectation of corresponding differences in perceptions in perceptions of and memory for color. There was some early research consistent with this idea, but other studies, although Wolff and Sapir are frequently cited as originators, the basic ideas actually have a relatively long history. Social psychology and language, in particular those of Ross and Berlin and Kay in 1969, provided that many regarded as evidence that strongly disconfirmed the hypothesis. Particularly influential was Ross's 1973 study of color memory in the Dawning, an Aboriginal original people in Papua New Guinea. The Dani language has only two color terms, black and white. However, in a color naming task, Dani participants perform better for focal colors, despite the fact that their language had no words for those colors. Rost and others argued that the physiology of color perception undercuts any effects that language might have in this domain. More recently, however, research examining the categorical perception of color, people perceive color categorically as blues, reds, etc. Even though the color spectrum is a continuum reflecting wavelength variations, has demonstrated that language can affect certain aspects of color perception. For example, the Turkish language has two color terms for the English term blue compared with English speakers. Turkish participants exaggerate the differences between colors, straddling the boundary of the two Turkish color terms. Similarly, in a free grouping task, Turkish Speakers tend to separate colors on the basis of this boundary. English speakers do not. Additional recent work in this vein has explored between language differences in the perception of time, space, and acquisition of categories. This research demonstrated that certain lexical and syntactic differences between languages can be associated with differences in the nature and speed of related cognitive process. One between language difference with social psychological relevance in person perception or the assignment of people to categories including dispositional categories. Languages differ in the lexical items that are available for categorizing others, and this creates the possibility that speakers of different languages may vary in their impression of others. A classic study conducted by Hoffman, Love, and Johnson in 1986 demonstrated this quite clearly. They presented Chinese English bilinguals with personality descriptors that were either consistent with a label in English label in English but not Chinese, example artistic type, or with a label Chinese but not in English. Participants who were randomly assigned to read the descriptions in either Chinese or in English demonstrated schematic processing of the description when the language they used provided a label for the description. Their impressions were more congruent with the label and they were more likely to endorse non-presented traits consistent with the label. Perhaps the most well-known and controversial demonstration of Wolffian effect in the social domain is Bloom's taxonomy's 1981 research on counterfactual thinking. Bloom argued that Chinese differs from English by its absence of linguistic devices, that is, example, the subjunctive for expressing counterfactual thoughts, and the existence of counterfactual devices in English but not in Chinese allows speakers of the former language to engage more easily and accurately in counterfactual reasoning than speaker of the latter language. The results of Bloom's research were consistent with this idea, but his methodology was open to serious criticism, with the most frequent objection being that Chinese translation he used were less idiomatic than the English versions. So, my dear students, hope you might have got the points. In this video, I have spoken on words, linguistic abstractness, language, gender, syntax, language and social thought between language effects, and words, identity and impression of others. So I have completed nearly 5 topics in this video, and remaining utterances are there. Another one topic, language, culture and meaning, that is not much important because these topics, I mean the points which is related to this topic, which has come here itself, in this topic itself. So my dear students, with these few words I would like to conclude my speech, my video. Hope you might have got the points. If you have any doubts, if you have any clarifications, means you can ask openly in the comment sections, and try to share this video with your fellow classmates and the students. Those who have not joined yet into the classroom, try ask them to join immediately as soon as possible, because classes are going and teachers are taking classes successfully. So you people should be benefited from these classes. So you people, those who are watching, those who are attending the classes regularly, I am pleasing them to ask and request your friends to join into the classes, and those students, those who are in classroom, and they have to attend the class regularly. Hope you got the points. With these words, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.